I thought it was really interesting, our conversation, because on the way in today, you were driving right behind me. And I've travelled from Whangarei Head, so I was travelling like 2 hours and 15 minutes, phone you up on the way in to make sure you could find the place okay. And you're 2 cars behind me, and the car that's behind me is your husband, who works like 200 metres away from where we're podcasting today. So quite interesting. And we're having a conversation about mental health and anxiety, just sort of how we're feeling today. And one of the things that we're talking about was I set up Creative Expression, the podcast, to face my own fear and face my anxiety of communication. So I'm like a work in progress, training with anxiety right now, enjoying the podcast experience. So I thought that was really interesting. How are you feeling?
Yeah, I think it is interesting, and I think I said to you, the anxiety that you felt about starting doing these, and then the anxiety that I feel about being on one of these. It's interesting, but and the whole driving and all the cars, and suddenly I'm right behind you. That was incredible. So anxiety is an interesting thing, though, and everybody feels it. So we were both feeling it this morning, I think.
Definitely. And we're talking about normalising mental health today, and like removing stigma from mental health. And it sort of like, I guess, demonstrates that it's just part of life. And normalising it, I guess, today is around having the conversation about it.
Definitely. I think that's the thing. People, everybody has mental health. So, mental health is just about, kind of the definition of mental health, if you like, is around your feelings, like the emotion, the psychological, how you think, and then the behaviour, like how you interact socially. And so that's pretty much what mental health is. So when we talk about mental health, we're actually talking about something that all of us have, but at different levels. So some people have good mental health, some people have not so good mental health. And that's very different to mental illness. Mental illness is around diagnosis. So, but mental health, you can have somebody with a diagnosed condition that still has good mental health.
Okay, that's interesting. Can you talk more about that? It's an interesting
so like I said, everybody has a level of mental health, and we could kind of rock through our life and be in a really good mindset, everything's going great, and then something can happen and come along and pull the rug beneath our feet, and suddenly our mental health declines because of stress, anxiety, loss, or whatever it is that's going on. But when you have somebody that's got a mental diagnosis, they might be well managed with medication and things like that, and their mental health might be really good. They might be living their life, they might be happy, they're socially interacting, they're out there, feeling good, they're thinking clearly, but they've still got a mental health diagnosis. So they've got some kind of mental illness there. That's different to what we work with at Hearts and Minds. So we focus a lot more on the mental health side of it, although we do get people coming through with diagnosis, of course. But for us, the everyday person, for everybody, we all have a level of mental health that we're living with. So
How do we start to identify when we're moving out of balance, and what are the things that we might experience or look out for to let us know that we might be moving from our sort of stasis position of mental health?
So it's those early warning signs, which we will ignore because we think we're clever than it. Our body tells us all the time that there's something going wrong. So generally what happens is it might be our sleep that gets affected when we're feeling a little bit under pressure somewhere. We might be more prone to migraines, or we might have reflux issues or IBS, or whatever your weak spots are, they're usually the things that show up first. And what we do is we ignore them. So we will carry on through our life and think that we're all good when we're really not, and our body's telling us actually you're not. You need to probably take a step back and rest and think about what it is that's going on in your life right now and how you could perhaps improve a few things. But because we don't, the kind of the body and the brain up the ante. So we might then not be sleeping and we're getting migraines, or we might not be sleeping with migraines and suddenly we've got, you know, upset stomachs or something, or an eczema flare up or something like that. The body always is conscious of what's going on. It will tell you in its way that things aren't right and that you need to slow down, take a break. The immune system can be affected, so obviously, you know, that adrenal glands get weakened and we can start to become unwell, pick up all sorts of viruses and colds and things. So again, the body is telling you the whole time that you're under pressure and you need to stop and slow down. And if we don't, then we're going to find ourselves in a little bit more trouble. So, but if we become more aware of our warning signs, the earlier we notice them, the easier it is to manage and do something about it.
So really being listening to our body, which often we can just ignore and, you know, we just think we're going to work through it physically, get some medication or minerals, vitamins, but it is a sign of what's maybe happening in our minds. And we may not always connect the dots early on in those situations as well. Yeah,
definitely. Like we don't, you know, because we're just living, we don't always identify what our body's trying to tell us. And sometimes we do know and we ignore it anyway. So, you know, for me, definitely my sleep is the one thing that goes out the window. So suddenly I won't be sleeping and then I will start to get headaches, and normally because I'm tired, so that's why that will happen. I can normally pinpoint that to something else that's going on that I'm thinking, okay, I'm probably getting a little bit stressed or a little bit, you know, up about something. Do I always choose to do something about it? No, absolutely not. I will carry on. Other times I do, and I think, oh no, I need to take a break. I need to go do something else and stop and, you know, start again and just take a breath. And actually, you know, otherwise if you carry on down that road, like I say, it really escalates and snowballs, and then we can find ourselves into, you know, more hot water.
So socially, you know, I think about how I've been brought up, family-wise, socially-wise, and we've been kind of brought up to be tough, not to share emotions, not to cry in public, and it's, you know, it's sort of been expected of us, particularly potentially as males, to be that tough influence or to look up to people like that. And I suspect that's generational, intergenerational. What can that have as an effect on someone like me being brought up like that and maybe not being used to talking about my feelings?
Yeah, it's really interesting. I think that is the case for a lot of people. You know, how we're brought up, people that have influenced us through our life have a real impact on us. And what's really interesting about that is we can go through our life a long way before we start to either recognise that we're living by somebody else's boundaries or rules, and we haven't even been aware of it. Carl Rogers, who was a philosopher around person-centred counselling, talks about something called self-actualisation, which is really where kind of the belief is all of us have the ability to meet our full potential. But what that actually is, it's when we start to recognise our true self. So what can happen is we could be 20, 30, 40 years old, it doesn't really matter when it happens, but it can happen at any stage, that suddenly we realise how we've always been living isn't really us. It's not how we want to continue to live. And so the rules and the boundaries and the, you know, and the values that we've been brought up with, you know, maybe you don't show emotion, or, you know, you mustn't cry, all those sorts of things, we now don't agree with at all. Well, you can imagine what that does to someone when suddenly, you know, their families, perhaps who they've got, you know, they love, respect, they're now thinking, I don't agree with them, I think they were wrong. And so it causes that internal dilemma with themselves around, why am I disagreeing with something I've always known? This is how I was brought up, and I don't actually agree with this now. And it's how you then come to terms with your own kind of clarity around who you want to be and how you want to live your life. So that change is really powerful, and that's usually when people then come into their true self and then go on to do great things, you know, be in their own person, as their own person, and not living their standards by somebody else's. Now, of course, some of the standards and the, you know, morals and values that we've brought up with are great, so we want to keep some of them. But it's when we start to challenge the ones that don't align with us anymore, it can cause that issue.
And I guess that can be a journey back in time to discover, you know, what that looked like for us, and to be with that before we can really move forward and learn with it. And the other part of that, I think, is there's no rule book on how to make that transition. So what do we do when we sort of start to think about, is this the real me, and is this how I want to move forward? What's my next step from there?
Yeah, probably fear.
Yes.
Because it's like, well, what do I want to do then? If I'm going to challenge everything I've always known, then what does that mean? What's that telling me? But, you know, fear doesn't always have to be scary. Sometimes it's about excitement as well. And I think for then it is about actually stepping, you know, having that courage to step into the new way and try different things and see if that does, you know, suit you, if that is how you want to move forward and live your life. You know, I think you can become more open, you learn more, you research, and I think you get to know yourself a lot more during those processes as well. You know, a lot of people don't, I think, ever really know who they really are. You know, we just live and, you know, go through our life doing what we do. Some people, especially with careers and things, some people go through their whole life doing the same thing over and over again because it's what they've always done.
Yes.
But probably if you sat them down and said, you know, if you could do anything in the world, what would you actually do? It'd probably be something completely different.
Yes.
And the reason they don't do that is a lot of the time through fear. You know, it's that fear of the unknown. What if it goes wrong? What if I make a mistake? What if it's not what I thought it was going to be? Am I being silly? Should I just stay doing what I always know? And a lot of the time we do. So it takes a lot of courage to step out of that and do something new.
Yeah. And just doing little things at a time, and just experimenting, so it's not too big a jump at one time.
Yeah, definitely. That's that's something that comes through all my my groups that I run, and I think probably everybody at work says the same thing. Everything is small steps. So, you know, you're much better off doing things slowly than trying to, you know, conquer Mount Everest, because if we set our sights too high, we're likely to fail.
Yes.
So, you know, we might not be ready to do that, but when we start setting small steps, then we achieve them, and that makes us feel good. It increases the confidence and allows us to then move to the next step and the next step and the next step. And all whilst we're doing that, we're actually achieving change, and we're moving to the goal that we've actually set ourselves. So ultimately, the small steps are really, you know, so crucial. You know, it's like anything, the good old New Year's resolution, I'm going to go to the gym 5 days a week, and normally lasts a couple of weeks, and then it's like, I can't be bothered with this anymore, I'm going to stop. Whereas if that, you know, somebody had said, well, okay, I'm going to go to the gym once a week and then really enjoy it, they're much more likely to go twice a week and 3 times a week and then stick with that, rather than jumping in at the 5 days and then pulling back. And that's pretty much with everything, I think, in life. You know, if we start slowly, build our confidence, you know, increase our self-esteem, reduce the stress, then things are a lot more achievable, and we don't get so overwhelmed either.
So it's facing our fears to find our freedom.
Yeah, definitely.
And so it's like just moving towards them and experiencing them a little bit at a time.
Yeah.
And what about sort of finding our purpose and our own values and who we are? You know, if we're sort of living by someone else's, or how we've been brought up socially, the self-discovery process of finding our own purpose, that's got to be a challenge in itself.
Yeah, it is, because, you know, some people might not really ever feel like they've got a purpose, whereas other people will feel like, you know, they've got a lot going on in their life. We see it a lot with people retire. So when people retire from their work, especially men, where they've, you know, their job has been their role, their purpose all through their life, and then suddenly they're retired, and then they're sitting there twiddling their thumbs with like, okay, what do I do now? No, and I say mostly men, it's probably a little bit more old school, but with anybody that's always spent their life doing something and then it changes, bringing up kids, as a mother and a father, you bring your kids up and then one day they're old enough and they leave home and they don't need you as much anymore. So your purpose as a parent, hasn't disappeared, it's just changed. And I think that's like life in general. Everything we do changes, and it changes our purpose. So, if we're in a particular job, doing a particular role, that's our purpose there. But is that our purpose as a human as well? What do we do outside of that? What do we do to, make our life more fulfilling? Is it meeting friends? Is it socialising? Do you have hobbies and sports? And what is it you enjoy doing? Because they're all purposeful as well. And I think that's where joy comes in. And I think sometimes as we get older, life gets too serious, and as adults we forget to have fun. We forget to dance around our kitchen when music's playing, or go do something that's seems really silly, playful, because life gets serious as we get older. But we need that in our life. We need that laughter. We need that fun. It's part of what keeps us alive, really.
It seems that if we're going through a challenging mental health period, we can nearly forget about what that feels like, or we have some memories of it, but we can nearly lose hope of that coming back into our lives. Can nearly look out of reach as well. If our mental health is sort of unchecked, I imagine it can sort of spiral quite quickly. If we're not sort of like facing those fears, or if we don't have the support. What can it look like if we have sort of a mild to moderate situation? Can it sort of spin?
Yeah, I think things change in our life all the time. When it comes to mental health, life circumstances happen, and they can be really unexpected. And suddenly we've gone from living our life the way we've always been living it to it being turned on its head. And I think when that happens, we're then faced with some new experiences that are often not pleasant. So stress, anxiety, panic, fear, all of those things that we may not have experienced to that degree at other times in our life. And we then have to manage those and work with those to try and get our life back together again into a healthy state. So the mild to moderate side of things is really your everyday person that's dealing with life circumstances that come along, show up, tip your world upside down, and then expect you to carry on as normal. And of course it doesn't always work like that.
That's right. I had a personal experience some years ago, and a few things happened just in life unexpectedly, and I was unsure how I was thinking. It just didn't make sense, and I didn't have that confidence to be able to work myself out that I may have had for the whole previous of my life. And I was talking to a close friend who had just been going through some counselling, and suggested I approach that as well. And before that, I had a little bit of a stigma about the whole mental health and counselling aspect of things. But I went in there, and the process of having conversations, someone knowing what questions to ask and help talk through and help my mind sort of settle down, made a huge difference. It's like the tools and the conversations to go through. But I think if I didn't have that friend close to me who suggested I trial this, I would have been probably deepened by the stigma of mental health. And do you feel that we still have this stigma around mental health?
Yeah, unfortunately I think we do to some degree. It's definitely a whole lot better than it used to be, and people are a lot more aware now. There's whole new scientific and medical research linking the mind and body, gut and brain and all of that stuff, which is making things a lot more relatable to people. I think the stigma of mental health way back was pretty shocking. Normal things that we deal with every single day were considered something more serious. And, you hear all these awful stories about different institutions that are around and the awful things that went on. Sadly, that's true, and they did, and I'm really pleased to say that we've come a long way since then. However, the stigma with mental health still seems to hold itself in the fact that people tend to believe they have to have something wrong with them before they can get help for things that are going on in their life. And if you think about it logically, if we have an earache or, tummy ache or whatever, ingrowing toenail, whatever it might be, we would go and see a doctor or we would go to a physio, and we have no problem doing that. We have no problem going to get the physical side of ourselves checked out. But when it comes to our mental health, for some reason, some people still think that that's too serious. There must be something seriously wrong with them if they need to go and access counselling or, a psychologist or whatever sort of talking therapy it is. Where they completely miss the point is that some people out there, and more people, and I'm really pleased to see this, more and more people are actually going to counselling and going to use different talking therapies to actually improve their life.
Yes.
It's not because they've got issues in their life, they actually want to use it to improve their life. So it's about improving their motivation, maybe gaining some more clarity around where their thought process is going. They might want to make some changes in their life and it's big decisions, and they want some support and some tools and skills to help them go through that, so it's a smoother transition. So it can be really beneficial for actually making advancements in our life. It's not just problem solving.
Yes.
And of course, when we do have issues that happen in our life and we've got problems, then talking to someone is so helpful. Sometimes people, when they go for counselling, it's the very first time in their whole life that they've ever disclosed something to that person. They've ever spoken it out loud. They may have lived that experience, they may have gone through it with their family and friends, but to actually tell a story from start to end to where they are now, that might be the first time they've ever done that in their life. And that is enormous.
Yes.
And that happens quite a lot in therapy. Over the years that I was doing therapy, so many clients, I saw it so often where people say, it's the first time I've ever told anybody about this. And so how are you feeling? Like, now we're talking about it, and I feel so much lighter. I didn't realise how heavy that was, that I was carrying around with me. And also it's that kind of saying those words out loud, it kind of normalises it for them, either normalises what they've actually gone through, the enormity of what they've been dealing with, or actually normalises their courage and their capabilities, what they've actually coped with and how they've come through it. So it can be really amazing for them, when they reflect back on it and think, wow, I'm still standing, I'm still here today and I'm living my life, and I've gone through all of that. Now speaking that out loud, I never realised what I'd experienced. So, talking therapies are really powerful. And, I'd encourage people to never ever feel like there's a stigma attached to going and talking to someone, because it can be an amazing experience.
Yes. Yeah. I think I went probably most of my life never looking back or thinking back, only thinking about the now and moving forward. And in the, I guess, more recent years of my life, I really appreciate taking time to reflect on all things good, not so good, and take some appreciation for the lessons we've learned through those, through those times. And I think that's really good to do. And we can probably all look back at our life and find experiences that we've gone through and how we've dealt with them. Some we might do differently now. The hindsight's a wonderful thing. But realising what we've actually dealt with in our life and where it's brought us to today. I mean, at the end of the day, we are who we are today because of what life's shown us. Yes.
So for good and bad. So it takes us down that road. And I think it is sometimes good to explore that. Not everybody will. Some people are really happy living in the here and now, and that's amazing if you are. But others where they are, if you're somebody that's still every now and again being caught up by things that have gone on in the past, and I think it's really good to explore that and, and work your way through it with some new tools and skills and different techniques that you can pick up along the way.
Great. And in regards to I guess tools and techniques, if someone's experiencing, say, mild anxiety, what are the things, when you sort of feel this coming on, what are some of the things that we can do to get a hold of that before it spirals further?
Yeah, so there's a number of different tools, I think, and breathing is probably one of the best things, and I always laugh about that because it seems so crazy when you say breathing. It seems so simple because we breathe all the time, but there are different techniques that help that. But distraction's another really powerful tool, and I think with, you know, when we're talking about panic attacks, when we go into a full-blown panic attack, they're really hard to manage. They are horrible, if you've ever experienced one, but if you haven't, they're pretty awful. Every part of your body is affected by it, and there's a number of different tools that you can use to try and help calm it down. But of course, like everything, it's much easier to actually try and manage it when you recognise it early, so you're not at that level. And the different techniques that you can use, you know, distraction, which is, there's a number of different distraction tools. I always recommend the ice technique because the brain suddenly recognises there's something else going on that it needs to focus on. Holding ice cubes in your hand.
Physical ice cubes.
Physical ice cubes in each hand. You can pop one in your mouth as well. You'll soon know what that feels like and why the brain's focusing on, oh, what's this experience? What's going on here? It stops focusing on the anxiety or the panic that you were feeling before. So it diverts the attention a little bit, because what tends to happen in panic is we go into that, we fuel it, because all we're doing is thinking about what's happening. It's, oh my God, my heart's racing, now I feel shaky, my eyes are going funny, now I feel like I'm going to pass out. So we're panic the whole time, and that's levelling itself up. So we've got to stop that. They're like I always say, panic's like a little mini tornado that starts off slowly and then whips up. So we need to stop it from doing that, and the best way to do that is to find the tool that works for you. Everybody's different. There isn't one tool that's going to work for everybody, and so that's why there's a lot of them out there. So just stepping outside the front door, change of air on your skin, feeling the sun or the breeze, walking to the end of the path and back. You can do sort of marching on the spot. You can, call a friend. You can do all sorts of things, but quick and easy ones are really like the ice cube, I think. Looking around the room to see what you can see. So how many things are the shape of a square? How many things are the colour blue? Go through the alphabet, making animals' names up with every letter, or all these sort of like games that we can play are all done to trick the mind to actually divert the attention away from the panic that we're actually feeling.
Yeah, great. So there's so this is where counselling, therapy, support can actually provide us those sorts of tools to help us in those situations. Absolutely. I mean, I work for Hearts and Minds. The groups that we run there are all about that. They're all psychoeducational, so they all provide tools and techniques to help you cope with whatever it is you're dealing with. And counselling does the same. It will explore different avenues that are going to work for you. And it's a little bit experimental as well. Everyone's different. So like I say, not one tool is going to work for the same, for different people. So it's exploring that and finding out what works for you. Yes.
And then when we use them, if we use them when we recognise the very beginnings of a panic attack, it stops it from escalating, and we can really get a grip of it a lot quicker. So it stops it from spiralling like that. So,
And if we're finding that we're experiencing, these challenges, and it might be, it might be the work we do, might be our relationships, could be just our children or life in general. How do we manage that? We can't necessarily always depart from maybe what might be triggering the feeling, but what can we sort of do to help ourselves day to day?
Yeah, so I think if we're living with something that's ongoing, so like when we talk about anxiety, so panic is a more of an in the moment type of thing. It's something that happens really quickly. It's a very fast onset. It can come out of nowhere, and it's pretty horrifying when it happens. Anxiety is slightly different. It's that constant fear of dread or apprehension, so it never really leaves us. And so when you look at that, if you're going through something in your life that isn't a quick fix, and it's something, like health conditions, if you're dealing with kind of health issues or relationship problems, financial issues, things that don't go away, in a heartbeat, they're always going to have that long tail to them, and that anxiety can sit there and just bubble away and peak and cause sorts of damage. So it is about being mindful of what we're dealing with, recognising that we've got this going on and trying to maintain some healthy options around our life at that moment. So taking care of ourselves, self-care, what do we actually need? Are we neglecting ourselves? Are we eating properly? Are we staying hydrated? Are we exercising? Are we socialising? Are we resting? If we can get some of that right, then that's, we're halfway there. And unfortunately, when we are in those stressful moments, they will go out the window because we're just focusing on what it is we're dealing with. But if we can try to stay focused on some of them and remind ourselves that, if we can just do one of them and see if we can just do one of those things once a day, it might be helpful. That starts to create a little bit of a balance, and we can start to work through some of the stuff that we're dealing with. It's also recognising about what's in our control and what's out of our control as well. We can't always fix what's out of our control. So it's about that acceptance around it, and what can you do if this is what's going to happen? How am I going to manage that? And most people do have the capacity to be able to do that and find a way of coping with whatever life throws up. But yeah, finding things that make you happy, really just being mindful of your own self-care. What do you enjoy? Are you sleeping? Do you like reading? Do you like gardening? Do you like baking? What is it that you can do that can take your mind off of what's going on in your life? It's not going to solve the problem, but for those minutes that you're doing it for, it makes you feel a whole lot better and just gives you a bit more inner strength to cope with what it is that you're actually dealing with.
You like art?
I like art, yeah. So I'm one of life's born worriers. So I worry about everything all the time. So I'd say my stress levels, I'm definitely in that mild to moderate all the time. I reckon I worry about all sorts, even things that are not in my control. I still worry about. I think most of the time I've got a handle on it, but every now and again when I do feel like something's particularly stressful, I do my painting. I do canvas painting. My mind just focuses on what I'm doing, and I'm able to shut everything else out while I'm doing that. There's not many things that work like that for me personally. Probably skiing and painting are the only two things I've found in my life that actually stop my brain from overthinking. And I think it's important to know as well, I know we talked a little bit before, Brendan, about whether you're an active relaxer or not, and if you're a fast person or a slower person. And I think for me to sit down and do like a meditation or something is really hard. I find that really difficult because my brain's too active and it's wandering all the time. So that wouldn't work for me. When I'm doing something, that's what calms me down. For somebody else, a nice relaxation or a meditation is perfect. And if you can do that and it calms you and grounds you, that's wonderful. So again, it's about recognising the type of person you are. If you're someone that can't sit there and, kind of relax, do a visualisation, do a relaxation technique, then maybe you're someone that needs to go for a walk or go bake a cake or do something like that, because you might find that's actually more relaxing for you than the alternative.
Yeah, for me, bush running, getting up for a run, would that be active relaxation?
Yeah, it would be, if your brain's not thinking about anything else, then
Yeah, the good thing about that is you're always looking where your foot's going. so you're not going to land on a rock or anything like
Yeah.
that and sprain your leg or anything like that, sprain your ankles.
Yeah.
So it just sort of keeps you focused, and it's good. It's a good way for me to get out
Yeah.
and get back to nature, and takes your mind off pretty much everything.
Yeah.
So it's about finding what works for you as an individual.
That's right.
To sort of like relax your mind.
Yeah. It's perfect. I mean, I think that's the thing. I think that's why skiing's so good. You're so road, you're not going to fall over.
Yes.
But I think, for you running, that's the perfect sort of activity for you. Do you use that when you're stressed?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, if I feel like I'm, a bit uptight, or need to sort of burn some energy off, then getting out for a bush run is definitely a way to do it. I always feel so much better when I come back from that.
Yeah, that's good. I think people find all sorts of things, like music's another one, people playing instruments and things like that, or it can be whatever it is. There's so many different things that people can do, but it's just about finding the one thing that's going to work for you that instantly calms you and stops your brain from being so active, and then putting that energy into something that's really positive. It's a really healthy thing to do.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah.
It's nice to hear what you're saying about you're finding that stigma, people are starting to go and ask for help more often now, and have I guess group or one-on-one conversations, not just because they're feeling bad, but just to help them sort of where they are in life and to move forward. And if someone is feeling, I guess, they've got mental health challenges, and you're the clinical director at Hearts and Minds, the mental health community charity, what's the first step someone could take in regards to connecting, I guess, with someone like Hearts and Minds or other sources of support?
Yeah, so basically they can just call us, and that's the easiest thing to do. Most of the GPs around know of us, and they will refer to us. So if somebody's actually sitting in with their GP and they're saying they're struggling and they need some support, then the GP can refer them to us, and the individual can also self-refer. So they can actually go on our website and fill in the self-referral form, and then they will receive a call from us, and somebody will talk to them. But the easiest thing to do is just to call us. And when we speak to somebody, whether it's a walk-in or somebody phoning up, we'll just talk to them on the phone first of all and find out what's happening for them, find out what they're looking for, how we can support them, and that path starts to open up. So we offer some counselling with final year students. We've got a whole programme full of groups, so we've got, I think, 20 odd topics running between now and June, and then it will change up for the second half of the year. So they cover all sorts of things: stress, anxiety, relationship issues, health anxiety, grief, loss. There's a whole range. Wow. A really varied course program that we've got. And we also offer a service called support coordination, health support coordination. So the health navigation side of things means they work with somebody in the office to find out what services are suitable for them that are going to help them. So we will talk to somebody, we'll find out whether it is they need one-to-one, that's the counselling, whether they are interested in any of our groups, whether they would like to join one of those groups, whether that's what they're looking for, and they'll talk through all the different programs that are available. And then there's the health navigation, which is where we start to work with them to find different support services that are in their area. So it may be that we don't offer the support they need. We never ever turn anyone away without something. So everybody that contacts us will be left with something and a support plan in place. So it could be that they might want more grief specific counselling. In that case we might refer them to one of the other organisations that are out there. And so we do the research for them, we do all that hard bit that they might not be feeling up to doing, and we will then offer them a list of the different organisations that they can then become in contact with and where they can get support from. So there's a full package of care that we offer, so counselling, the group work and the external support as well. So hopefully anybody that comes into Hearts and Minds will go away with, you know, a nice little package of support.
It's a great community service, and so you can make one phone call, you can potentially receive some one-on-one counselling. Depending on where you're at, you can go into a multitude of different group courses, and you can also be directed in the right direction to have external sources support you as well. I think we're probably one of the only organisations that offer that whole complete package. You know, there's a lot of limited resources out there at the moment. You know, lack of funding is a big thing. I know we've lost organisations where they've had to close down, which is really sad. We are still standing and we're really busy. And to be able to offer people the option of different, you know, kind of pathways to get support is amazing. And it's all free. So there's some low cost on a couple of things, but it's predominantly a free service. Yeah, that's fantastic. You might start getting international calls after this podcast, Maria, to Hearts and Minds, and I guess you know, globally, you know, the advice around that. This is a beautiful service that we have here in Aotearoa. But globally, I guess that's a similar call for anyone, is to look for an organisation that does support mental health and make that call. Because I know that it can be overwhelming when there's so many services and channels to go through to know, you know, where to start. I think that's true, and we do receive calls from people that have been bounced around a bit as well. You know, they've tried to contact different people and have got nowhere, and that's always sad when that happens. And we really do our best to make sure that when people come to us, we try and embrace them and offer them some kind of level of support. And you know, not everybody, because we do operate in that mild to moderate, not everybody might fit our criteria, so there are people that might exceed that, but again, we know exactly what to do with that. We will refer them on to other organisations that are equipped to then support them, so we don't just close the door on anyone. I'm interested in particularly the group courses that you run, and people's perception of what that's about, because I can imagine a lot of people could be a little bit nervous about sitting around in a group of people they haven't met before and talking about, you know, quite private potentially situations. What's that sort of before and after effect that you see? So I think it is, not everybody wants to do one-to-one, not everybody wants to do groups, so it's definitely initially finding out what someone's comfortable with, what they're looking for. Most people, when they go into a group environment, have got some idea of what to expect. It might be the first time they've ever done a group, a course before. I think some of them are in person, some of them are online, and there's pros and cons for both of them. And some people will only prefer one or the other. But generally, when you know, if you think about walking into a room filled with people sitting there that you've never met before, when you're going to be talking about stuff, it can be quite sensitive. It is really scary, and I really admire everybody that ever comes on our groups and courses, because it takes courage to do that. I think it's a really brave move, and I'm really pleased to say that the outcome of that is, you know, a majority of the time people go away saying it was a wonderful experience, they've loved it. So there's no pressure. All our groups are interactive, so we try not to make them like lectures. We don't want to bring people in and then just give them a load of information. I mean, we can get that from the internet, right? It is about interacting with them in that group. So it's about, you know, working together with each other, open discussion, conversations. There's the way I run my groups. We do a few slides and things on the topic that we're discussing, and then there's usually a little exercise that we work on, and that's where people can go and think about what it is we've just been learning. Sometimes it's in groups or pairs, sometimes it's an individual exercise, and then they're always asked to share back. Now, there's no pressure on anybody to share that information, and we do always say at the start, you know, share what you're comfortable with. They're not therapy groups. This isn't group therapy. It's a educational group. So, you know, kind of share what you're comfortable with, and there's no pressure.
I think once people are actually in the room and they realise everybody's feeling the same, you know, where everyone's sitting there feeling some form of anxiety, they're nervous, they're worrying about what to expect, that in itself normalises it for everybody. And once you've got the dreaded introductions out of the way, I think people really relax anyway. So I think the groups, we try and make them enjoyable and fun, and you know, majority of the time people have really enjoyed them and come away with some new skills and tools and techniques they didn't have before. Or it's just reminded them of what they already know and have forgotten to use.
Yes.
So, you know, we tend to know this stuff anyway, we just don't use it and we forget to use it.
It feels, just even talking, it feels quite light and energising.
Yeah.
And just I think I can imagine people walking away from those just feeling so much more relaxed and feeling better and more stronger to move forward.
I hope so.
Yeah.
we get good feedback, so I think we're doing
great.
okay job. Yeah.
Fantastic. And looking out for others, you know, like we might see people within our work environment, our home, our community, who may look like they're struggling. How do we help, and what do we sort of do in our communities for others who we might feel might be suffering?
Yeah, I think you know, connecting is really important. I mean, communication is the key, right? I think when we see people and we think they're not their normal self, you know, kind of don't be afraid to ask them, you know, are you okay? Is there anything I can help with? You know, what's happening? What are you doing at the moment? Basic, normal, everyday questions. Start a conversation with them to find out what it is that's going on. And then if it is somebody that's actually recognises struggling with something, and there are some, you know, depression there or anxiety there or whatever, then, you know, kind of explore what they're doing about that, you know, not necessarily where it's coming from. We don't want to probe, but actually know if they got any help, do they need any support, do they know what's out there where they can get that support as well. I think just communicating is the key for that. You know, if we talk enough, if you think about, you know, I always think sort of war times, especially, you know, in the UK, there was no counselling, that didn't exist back then. But when you think about it, you know, men were out at war, women and kids were left at home. In their streets and their communities, they formed their own council.
Yes.
They were counselling each other all the time. They come together, they supported each other. You know, when one person was struggling and, you know, being tearful, may have got some horrible news or something, it was the neighbours that jumped in and, you know, the people in the community that supported them. And they talked and they worked through it together. Yes. That's the form of counselling that happened then. That's before all the one-to-one counselling really, you know, came on board. So I think, you know, we as humans do want to communicate. We do want that support in our life, and it's just knowing about where you can get it from. So if we kind of fast forward to today, we don't have that similar setup. There are some communities that are out there that still provide that. I know like lots of churches do, and, you know, different cultures form their own communities as well. But generally, you know, the world's a small place now. People travel all around. I mean, I'm from England and I'm here in New Zealand, so I could be further away from all my friends and family. So, you know, when you are somewhere away from your community, what do you do if you need support? So that's where those organisations like Hearts and Minds really come into their own, and I'm really pleased that we've got those around where when you're talking to someone who is struggling, you can do what you can do for them, but also, you know, provide them with some other support as well as to what else is available for them.
Yeah, it's quite nice. It's really interesting talking about their community used to support each other at that level. That community is sort of dispersed a little bit now. And we've got, you know, the busyness of social media and people more coming into themselves or into smaller groups. So this is why it's so helpful to have a support network like that, and not everyone has a community wrapped around them. No. And so that's why, you know, reaching out is really important.
Yeah, it is really important. And I think, I don't know, I think pressure's big these days. I think generally most people are under some kind of pressure, you know, whether it be work, you know, personal life, whatever. Life's tough.
Yes.
You you know, our youngsters live in a different age now, you know, with all the digital platforms that are out there. That's a whole nother beast. I mean, we haven't got time to go into all of that.
Yes.
But that causes its own drama. So, I mean, that's a whole new world that's arrived that brings an awful lot of anxiety and stress with it. You know, there's financially, you know, the economics are really tough and people are struggling, people are losing their jobs, and you know, life's hard for a lot of people. So it's about trying to still, you know, cope with that, manage your life and still function while you're dealing with what it is you're going through. So yeah, definitely talking really does go, it sounds so simple, doesn't it, when you say it like that? Talking and breathing, it sounds
That's right.
so simple, but it's true, and they do work. They absolutely do. The sad thing is, when you're dealing with a lot of mental health issues around, especially depression, anxiety, we tend to withdraw. So we do the opposite. So rather than doing what would probably make us feel better, we actually do the opposite and pull away a bit. So I think it's, you know, then you are a little bit reliant on other friends and things, say, hey, come on, let's do something, let's sit and talk, let's find something that's going to help you right now. But yeah, withdrawing is not a good thing.
And you know, your mission, like we said at the very beginning, is about normalising mental health, you know, looking at how do we take away the stigma of mental health, and a lot of that is about, you know, this is communicating and you know, just sort of sharing ideas and making it, I guess, more normalized, just to talk about it and ask the questions, and big question, how are we feeling, you know, things like that, just checking in on each other. Definitely. Brilliant. Well, thank you so much, Maria, for sharing this today. And before we sort of wrap up, is there anything else you'd like to sort of share with the audience? It's such a wide topic, and I think partly, you know, how we started, it's about just, you know, normalizing mental health through conversation, not covering everything off or being too prescriptive. But is there anything that you'd like to touch on today before we wrap?
Not really. I think it is just about, you know, normalising is a really big thing for me. And I think, you know, we might never expect that we're going to be the one dealing with panic and anxiety, and it caught me out by surprise when it happened to me. It was why I do what I do. I think the experience that I went through changed everything, changed my career, changed everything. And so when, you know, when you are suddenly faced with something that's scary and places you in a position that you've never experienced before, it's nice to know that actually what's happening to you is normal in the circumstances. You might not feel like that at the time. I didn't at the time. But yeah, I think don't be frightened to ask for help, I think. And
a question on that, you know, experiencing I guess anxiety at a personal level, what do you take away from that today? You know, how has that changed your life, I guess, for the better? Is there things that you can take away from that and appreciate from those experiences?
Yeah, I mean, mine, my experience happened a long time ago now, 25 years ago, and I think I've learned a lot through that. So mine happened through losing my dad. I was working in London at the time. I was working 17 years in London doing a job, you know, working for an American bank, doing a completely different career to what I do now. And my dad had been really unwell for many years with heart issues, and then he was placed on a transplant list for a heart transplant. That in itself was a roller coaster of emotion, which, and then finally we had a few false calls, and then finally he got the call to say that there was a heart that was available for him. So the surgery went ahead, and unfortunately for him it didn't work. For some reason the left-hand side of the heart wouldn't work. Apparently it's something they couldn't work out. They didn't know why that would happen, and there was still research being done as to why that did happen. Hopefully now they've actually solved that one, and for people that are going through that, you know, have a really successful outcome. But for him it wasn't to be, And that completely turned my whole world upside down. So my dad was a real East Ender, a real tough cookie, and didn't look ill. He had his first heart attack when he was 41, so he was really young, and a triple bypass, and then went on, and he actually passed away when he was 54. So still very young. I've outlived my dad, so.
Nice.
But I think, him going literally turned my world on its head. And you know, in every family there's a structure as to how you cope with stress and, you know, anxiety and loss and grief. And for me, my role became just the doer. So I'm very, as a person, I'm very organised, very methodical, very rational and practical, very independent. And in that situation, I think I just took on the role of just doing. So was managing what needed to be done. You know, my whole family obviously were incredibly distraught by what happened, as was I. But you just keep going through it. And I thought I was coping okay because I was doing. So, you know, remember not a a calm relaxer, I'm an active relaxer. I thought, okay, this is good, I'm managing this. Didn't feel good at all actually, but was doing it anyway. And then I was actually at home, I wasn't working, so I'd taken time off work because I couldn't deal with that as well. And at home, standing there ironing, too much space to think in the head. And what actually happened was, it was a sunny day and a plane flew over and cast a shadow over the sun, which made the light change in my lounge from light to dark, like in a second. And now I realise how fragile I really was at the time, because you wouldn't even pay attention to that normally. But that change in light for me, I just must have looked up as that was happening, and it felt like something had happened to my eyes. And before I knew it, I was in absolute full-blown panic.
Yes.
Didn't know it was panic though at the time. So my heart was about to jump out my chest. I was shaking. I didn't know whether I was going to throw up, pass out, whatever. My whole body was a mess. And when we talk about panic attacks, anxiety attacks, we talk about the list of symptoms like fight or flight and the symptoms that creates. Not everybody experiences all of them. Some people have one or the other, or a few of them. I had the whole lot. The whole list was happening.
Congratulations.
To me.
Yeah.
I won the award on that one. But it was just absolutely awful, terrifying. So much so that I called my husband from work and said, come home, something really terrible has happened to me, I need to go and see a doctor. So I did, and he took me to the doctor, and I sat in front of the doctor, and he said to me, well, my dear, you've had a panic attack. And I was like, okay, what's that? I don't even know what that is. And he was going, oh, it's just, have you been under a lot of stress lately? I'm like, well, yeah, but, and he was trying to say to me that it was a panic attack. And I couldn't even comprehend what he was saying. It was so far removed from who I thought I was, because I didn't really know what a panic attack was. I hadn't really heard of them much. And there I was, who I thought, this organised, methodical, practical, rational person, sitting there being told I'd had a panic attack, just didn't match me. And so I was like, no way, like, what is this even? So really struggled to get my head around that. What happened next was I had more of them, and then went into a kind of routine of having them quite regularly, which was just awful. And it's because I was panicking about them, to the point where my friends and family said to me, maybe you need to go see a counsellor. And I was like, don't be ridiculous, how's that going to help? What's a counsellor? And the reason I'm in this state is because I've just lost my dad, and unless they can bring my dad back, I don't see how a counsellor can work.
Interesting you saying that now, thinking back and where you are now, right?
Absolutely, yeah. And probably what people still think now, how can a counsellor help? How can they
Totally.
fix my problem? They, you know, I've got this is happening to me, how can they fix it?
No one else has ever experienced this.
No. You know, it's just, you can't fix my problem, so how's that going to help? And that was absolutely 100% my attitude when I went to see a counsellor and went in there like a stroppy teenager. I wasn't. I was actually in my early 30s at the time, but I was behaving like a stroppy teenager. I was like, I'm here because everybody tells me they think I should be here. Yes. I don't know what I'm going to talk about, and you can't fix it because you can't bring my dad back. So she was amazing and just said, okay, that's fine. And we talked about all sorts of other things. I think I had 6 sessions in all. 3 sessions we didn't even talk about what was going on. And came out the other end. By the end of the last session, I literally had a massive change of where I wanted my life to go, and just knew that was what I wanted to do. And I remember saying to her, oh my goodness, I know what I need to do with my life. I'm going to go out and I'm going to train to do counselling. And she was all for it. She said, go for it, I think it'd be great. I didn't do that immediately because obviously I was still dealing with my own stuff, but I did then go and sign up and on a foundation course, I think it was in the beginning, and then ended up on a whole 6-year worth of studying to do what I do now.
Yes.
But a couple of things that happened along the way there was about, for me, that realisation that, you know, I had issues going on with loss and grief at the time. And of course you can't fix that, but it's about having tools and techniques to learn to, you know, use as you go through your life. And I remember saying to the counsellor, you know, what's going to help me? I don't like these panic attacks. How am I going to stop them? When are they going to stop? And she said to me, well, when you stop panicking about them,
yes.
Which was, I thought at the time, the most unhelpful thing she could have said. Like, how can I stop panicking about something that makes me feel like I'm going to die every time? But it's true, you know, when you start to realise, actually, you're not going to die of a panic attack. It might feel like it, but you're not. And the other thing was about breathing. You know, you learn to breathe properly, and the whole breathing, slowing your heart down, it slows the adrenaline. So yes. When you go into a panic attack, it's the release of the adrenaline that causes the issue, really. The adrenaline it floods the bloodstream and then causes the heart to rapidly beat. And when you breathe, if you breathe, I always use the 5 and 7 breathing technique. That was what I was told, you know, many years ago. It's what I use. There's many different techniques out there. But that one in particular, the outward breath slows the heart down. So when you slow the heart down, obviously it reduces the heart rate and the adrenaline. When you do that, the panic attack slows down and stops. So breathing around something rectangular shaped is really helpful. So you breathe in for 5, pause, blow out for 7, and then repeat. Okay. And that's really, really helpful. If you can catch a panic attack before they start, the breathing is really, really helpful. If you do the breathing and the distraction techniques, they can be really amazing.
Yes.
If you leave it till you're in full-blown mode, then obviously that's a little bit harder, so you have to work a bit harder to do it. But I think, you know, through my own experience of coming out of that and then going into, you know, doing all my studying and then do what I do now, spent years doing counselling and psychotherapy, and kind of moved away a little bit to more of a, you know, the management side of things, still do the groups and things. It's really shown me the other side of the fence. So when people do talk about their experience, you know, I'm dealing with a panic attack, don't think anyone really understands. I truly do. And, you know, and I know a lot of people do as well. But it is important to remember that, you know, you can't compare what you're going through to what somebody else is going through, even if it's the same thing. So I think for me, it normalised that actually talking to someone about stuff was really, really helpful. You know, I'd lived through it, but I'd never told anybody. You know, all my friends and family knew about it. Obviously, we were all in it together. But actually telling someone what actually happened, when I did that for the first time, it was like I was telling another story. You know, I was reading somebody else's life, or, you know, hearing somebody talk about something that wasn't really me, and then you realise what you've actually gone through.
Yes.
So that, I think, in itself is so beneficial for people to remember that, you know, that kind of sharing and talking is, you know, you're normal. You know, whatever normal is, you're normal. We're all the same. Probably shouldn't say normal, but no, I don't know. I actually don't know what normal is. But like, you know, it is you know, when we talk about normalising thing, I think it's like there's not something really wrong with you because you're experiencing this. It's and what you're feeling is a normal feeling, given the circumstances that you're dealing with. So, yeah, I think the outcome of it has been interesting. Made a big impact on my life. Yeah.
Well, thanks for sharing your story. And I think, you know, one of the things I take it from that is the panic attacks will stop when you stop panicking. And we're often, I guess, looking for the solution, the quick fix. But what that sort of says to me is that we've actually got to do some work and go back a little bit to really identify, you know, the cause and who we are and be with ourselves. And then things will get better. So we sort of have to sort of step deeper and back before we can move forward. But thank you for sharing your story. It's really, really amazing. And it sort of transitioned you from where you were in global banking to the line of work you're doing.
It's a totally different
amazing situation. Well, you know, like today was about normalising mental health and talking through it. I think we've covered it off really well today. And thank you for your time. For me, it feels like, you know, mental health doesn't mean we're broken. It's more about us who we are, and it's about us just moving forward and progressing and recognising that will be in and out of our lives. It's part of who we are. It's always normal to feel those things. You know, we're not robots. Absolutely. Thank you, Maria. I appreciate you. Thank you so much. Thank you. Hope you enjoyed this podcast. Thanks for watching, and feel free to connect with me on my socials. If there's anything you'd like to ask at any time, you can also contact me on brendan.rolston@actionhq.co. Until next time, stay connected, be creative, and enjoy your day.